As Oliver groggily came to, his head pounded like a bass drum at a rock concert. Blinking, he struggled to clear his fuzzy vision. The air around him was thin, carrying a strange metallic tang that made him choke slightly. As his eyesight adjusted, he was seized by a wave of panic. This was definitely not his bedroom. He was surrounded by sleek, curved metal walls that arched upward to a domed ceiling pulsating with an eerie blue glow. Oliver attempted to sit up, but his limbs felt like lead. He realized he was lying on some sort of cold, metallic examination table, completely naked. "What the heck?" he mumbled, his voice hoarse and dry. Suddenly, a door slid open with a soft hiss. Oliver's eyes widened as a group of figures entered. They were humanoid, but unmistakably alien. Tall and slender, with skin in various shades of blue, and all of them appeared to be female, at least as far as he could tell. One of them stepped forward, her gaze piercing and intense. Her skin was a deep, shimmering azure, accentuated by striking silver eyes. Despite his confusion and fear, Oliver couldn't help but notice how stunningly beautiful she was, in an otherworldly sort of way. "The specimen is awake," she announced, her voice melodic but coldly clinical. "Prepare him for the tribunal." Oliver tried to speak, to demand answers, but his mouth felt like it was full of cotton. Two of the blue women approached him and effortlessly lifted him from the table. His legs buckled as they set him upright, and he would have crumpled to the floor if not for their firm grip. "Where am I?" Oliver finally managed to croak out. "Who are you people?" The woman with the silver eyes raised an eyebrow. "All will be explained shortly. For now, you will come with us." Half walking, half dragged, Oliver was led through a series of winding corridors, the blue light pulsing in rhythm with his racing heartbeat. Finally, they arrived in a vast circular chamber. In the center stood a raised dais upon which sat 5 more blue-skinned women, all with impassive expressions. "Bring the human forward," commanded one of the women on the dais, her voice ringing with authority. Oliver realized he was facing some sort of leadership council or tribunal. As they positioned him before the dais, Oliver's attention was drawn to one member of the tribunal. Her skin was a soft, shimmering turquoise, and her eyes were a mesmerizing deep blue. She appeared younger than the others, and as she looked at him, there was a flicker of something in her expression, curiosity, maybe even sympathy. The apparent leader of the tribunal spoke again. "Human male, you have been brought before us to serve a vital purpose. Our civilization faces a crisis, and you hold the key to our survival." Oliver's mind reeled. What? Look, there's been some kind of mistake. I'm just a regular guy from Earth. I don't know anything about." Silence. Another tribunal member cut him off. "You will speak when given permission." The leader continued, her tone brooking no argument. "Our species is dying. A genetic anomaly has rendered us incapable of producing male offspring. Without new genetic material, we face extinction within generations." Oliver's mouth went dry as the implication of her words sank in. "And that's where I come in?" The turquoise-skinned woman he had noticed earlier leaned forward slightly. "You are to be the progenitor of a new lineage," she explained, her voice softer than the others. "Your genetic makeup is compatible with ours. You will father the next generation of our people." "Whoa, hold on," Oliver protested, finding his voice. "You can't just kidnap someone and force them to breed. This is insane." The leader's eyes narrowed. "Your cooperation is not required, merely your genetic material. However, willing participation would be preferable." Oliver's mind raced, searching for a way out of this nightmare. "Look, I understand you're in a tough situation, but there has to be another way. Maybe I could contact Earth, get volunteers or something." A ripple of what might have been amusement passed through the tribunal. The woman with silver eyes, still standing near Oliver, spoke. "Your planet is primitive, barely capable of interstellar travel. We have been observing humanity for centuries. You were chosen specifically for this task." "But why me?" Oliver demanded. "I'm nobody special." The turquoise woman, who he would later learn was named Zura, answered, "Your genetic profile is ideal. Strong, diverse, with few hereditary weaknesses. You are also," she paused, her gaze sweeping over him in a way that made Oliver acutely aware of his nakedness. Physically suitable. Oliver felt his face flush, equal parts embarrassment and an unexpected flicker of arousal. He pushed the feeling aside, focusing on the dire reality of his situation. This is kidnapping, he argued. It's a violation of my rights. You can't just. Your Earth concepts of rights do not apply here. The tribunal leader interrupted coldly. You will fulfill your purpose, willingly or not. The survival of our species depends on it. Oliver's fists clenched at his sides. And if I refuse? The silver-eyed woman placed a hand on his shoulder, her touch sending an involuntary shiver through him. Refusal is not an option, Oliver Reynolds of Earth. You will provide what we need, one way or another. How do you know my name? Oliver asked, startled. A thin smile curved the woman's lips. We know everything about you, Oliver. Your likes, your dislikes, your deepest desires and darkest fears. We chose you for a reason. Oliver tried to step back, but her grip tightened. This is wrong, he insisted. I won't do it. You can't make me. The leader of the tribunal rose, her voice like ice. We have methods of ensuring compliance, human. It would be in your best interest to cooperate willingly. You mean torture? Oliver spat, fear and anger warring within him. Zara spoke up, her tone almost gentle. Not torture, Oliver. But there are ways to persuade you, to make you eager to fulfill your role. The implication in her words, combined with the way her eyes roved over him, sent a jolt of heat through Oliver's body. He cursed his own physiology, willing himself to focus on the horror of his situation rather than any misplaced arousal. This is insane, he muttered, more to himself than to the aliens surrounding him. I have to be dreaming. The silver-eyed woman's grip loosened slightly, her touch becoming almost caressing. I assure you, this is very real, but it need not be unpleasant. Cooperate, and you will be treated well. Resist, and she trailed off, the threat clear in her tone. Oliver's mind raced, searching for a way out. Look, even if I agreed, which I don't, one guy can't repopulate an entire species. It's not genetically viable. A murmur passed through the tribunal. Zara leaned forward, her eyes bright with what might have been excitement. We have methods of accelerating reproduction and genetic diversity. Your contribution, combined with our technology, will be sufficient. But, Oliver began, only to be cut off by the tribunal leader. Enough discussion. The human will be taken to the preparation chambers. Zara, you will oversee his acclimation. Zara stood, descending from the dais with fluid grace. As she approached, Oliver couldn't help but notice the sway of her hips, the way her form-fitting garment hugged her curves. He silently berated himself for noticing such things at a time like this. Come, Oliver, Zara said, her voice low and melodious. I will explain more as we go. As the silver-eyed woman released him, Oliver considered making a break for it. But where would he run? He was on an alien planet, surrounded by beings with technology far beyond his understanding. Escape seemed impossible. With a resigned sigh, he allowed Zara to lead him from the chamber. As they walked, Oliver's mind whirled with questions and fears. How had he ended up in this situation? Was there any way out? And perhaps most troublingly, why did part of him feel an undeniable attraction to these alien women, despite the circumstances? Zara's voice interrupted his thoughts. I know this must be overwhelming for you, Oliver, but I assure you, we mean you no harm. Your role here is vital, and you will be honored for it. Oliver scoffed. Honored? You kidnapped me and are basically turning me into a breeding stud. How is that honorable? A small smile played at the corners of Zara's mouth. Many men on your planet would consider it quite an honor to be desired by so many women. Not like this, Oliver insisted, though he felt a treacherous heat in his cheeks. This isn't right. Zara stopped, turning to face him fully. Her deep blue eyes seemed to peer into his soul. Oliver, I understand your reservations, but please believe me when I say that this is necessary. Our entire civilization hangs in the balance. For a moment, Oliver almost felt sympathetic. Then he remembered his own predicament. That doesn't justify kidnapping and forced breeding. There has to be another way. We've explored every option, Zara said softly. This is our last hope, and you, Oliver Reynolds, are the key to our survival. As they resumed walking, Oliver's mind raced. Part of him wanted to keep arguing, to rail against the injustice of it all. Henry found himself once again alone with Elyra, her turquoise eyes filled with a mix of sympathy and determination. She approached him slowly, her voice soft yet resolute as she whispered, "Henry, it's time to stop fighting. Your resistance only prolongs the inevitable." Henry stared at her, torn between the growing fatigue of his resistance and the fierce desire to maintain his autonomy. But deep down, he knew that with each passing day, the lines between captivity and consent were blurring, leaving him unsure of how much longer he could hold on to what was left of his resolve. As Elyra stood before him, her presence both comforting and unnerving, Henry's mind raced with conflicting thoughts. He wanted to shout, to push her away, to make it all stop, but his body felt heavy with exhaustion. The weeks of isolation, seduction, and psychological torment had taken their toll, and the cracks in his resolve were widening with each encounter. "Henry," Elyra said, her voice as soothing as a lullaby, "we can make this easier for you. You don't have to suffer like this. I can help you find peace in your role here. You don't have to keep fighting." He shook his head weakly, struggling to summon the strength to resist. I'm not giving in. This isn't right. You can't just force me to be something I'm not." Elyra sighed, her expression softening with what seemed to be genuine regret. "I don't want to force you, Henry. None of us do. But our species is dying, and you are the key to our survival. If there were another way, we would take it. But there isn't." Henry looked up at her, searching her face for any sign of deception. But all he saw was the same mixture of determination and sorrow that had haunted him since his capture. It was a look that told him she truly believed there was no other choice. "I know you're tired," Elyra continued, stepping closer. "I can see it in your eyes. The constant battle, the strain, it's wearing you down. Let me help you. Let me make this easier for you." She reached out and gently placed her hand on his cheek. Her touch was warm, and Henry felt a strange sense of comfort in it, despite everything. He closed his eyes, trying to block out the rising tide of emotions threatening to overwhelm him. "Henry," she whispered, her voice barely audible, "you don't have to do this alone. We can be together in this. You'll be cared for, respected, even loved. Isn't that better than the constant pain of resistance?" Henry's eyes snapped open, the word loved reverberating in his mind. He hadn't felt love in so long, since before this nightmare began. The thought of finding it here, in this impossible situation, made him feel both hopeful and desperate. But then, just as quickly, the reality of his predicament returned. "This isn't love," he said hoarsely, pulling away from her touch. "This is manipulation. You're trying to break me down, make me into something I'm not." Elyra's eyes flickered with something, perhaps a twinge of guilt or frustration, but she didn't withdraw. "I'm offering you a way to survive, Henry, a way to find meaning in this, to be more than just a prisoner." He stood up, taking a few shaky steps away from her, his back to the wall. "I don't know who I am anymore," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "Everything I thought I knew, it's all slipping away. And I don't know if I can keep fighting." Elyra's expression softened even more, and she took a step forward, closing the distance between them. "Then don't fight, Henry. Embrace what's being offered to you. It doesn't have to be a battle. You can find peace here." Henry looked at her, feeling an overwhelming urge to surrender, to just give in and let the exhaustion and despair wash over him. He could feel the temptation to stop resisting, to allow himself to be swept away by the current of this strange new life. But deep down, a part of him still clung to the man he had been, the man who valued his freedom, his autonomy, his right to choose. That part of him wouldn't let go, not yet. "I need time," he said finally, his voice trembling. "Time to think, to figure out who I am in all of this." Elyra nodded slowly, her eyes filled with understanding. "I can give you that, Henry. Take the time you need. But remember, we're running out of time too." With that, she turned and left the room, the door sliding shut behind her with a soft hiss. Henry stood there for a long moment, staring at the closed door, his thoughts a tangled mess of fear, confusion, and doubt. He wasn't sure how much longer he could hold on, but for now, he had bought himself a little more time. Time to think, time to plan, time to decide what kind of man he wanted to be in the face of impossible odds. And as he sank back onto the bed, his mind still racing, he couldn't help but wonder if there really was a way out of this nightmare, or if he was doomed to become the very thing he feared most. The days after his conversation with Elyra passed in a blur of confusion and dread. Henry felt trapped in a surreal, nightmarish reality, where each moment dragged on endlessly, yet the days seemed to blur together. Despite Elyra's promise to give him time, he couldn't shake the feeling that the clock was ticking, that every hour brought him closer to a decision he wasn't ready to make. His room, though comfortable, felt like a gilded cage. The entertainment systems, the luxurious bed, the tailored meals, all designed to keep him placated, only served to remind him of his captivity. The isolation gnawed at him, his thoughts looping endlessly through despair, anger, and a creeping sense of inevitability. One evening, after what felt like an eternity, the door to his quarters slid open. Henry tensed, expecting another visit from Elyra or perhaps another member of the tribunal. Instead, a different figure stepped inside. She was smaller than the others, with skin a soft shade of lavender and eyes that shimmered with an ethereal glow. Her presence was gentler, less imposing, but her gaze held a quiet intensity. "Henry Matthews," she said, her voice like a gentle breeze. "I am Elyra. I've come to speak with you, if you're willing." Henry narrowed his eyes, suspicious. "What do you want? More of the same? Trying to convince me to just give up?" Elyra shook her head, her expression serene. "No, Henry. I'm not here to force anything upon you. I'm here to listen and, perhaps, to offer you something different." "Different?" Henry echoed, skepticism heavy in his voice. "I've heard that before. What could you possibly offer that's different from the others?" Elyra smiled faintly, a hint of sadness in her eyes. "I understand your mistrust, but I assure you, I have no ulterior motives. I want to help you if I can." Henry snorted, folding his arms defensively. "Help me? By what? Making me feel better about being a prisoner?" She stepped closer, but stopped a respectful distance away, her eyes never leaving his. "I know you feel trapped, and I don't blame you. This situation is unprecedented, but I believe there may be a way to find a solution that respects your autonomy while still addressing the needs of my people." Henry's curiosity was piqued, despite himself. "And how do you propose to do that?" Elyra hesitated, as if carefully choosing her words. "There is a device, a form of technology we have not yet used in this context. It's experimental, but it might allow you to communicate with Earth, to reach out for help." Henry's heart skipped a beat. "Communicate with Earth? You mean I could call for help? Tell someone what's happening here?" She nodded. "Yes, though there are limitations. The message would be brief, and it would take time to reach its destination. But it's possible. I can't promise it will change everything, but it's a chance to reach out, to seek assistance, or even just to let your people know what's happening." Henry's mind raced. This was the first real glimmer of hope he'd had since he woke up on this alien world. But with that hope came a surge of doubt. "Why are you telling me this? Why help me now? The tribunal would never allow it." Elyra's expression softened, and she glanced down, almost as if ashamed. "Not all of us agree with the methods being used. I can't openly defy the tribunal, but I can offer you this. A chance, however slim, to take some control of your situation. To reach out for help, if that's what you choose." Henry studied her face, searching for any sign of deceit. But all he saw was sincerity, tinged with a quiet desperation. He realized that Elyra, like him, was trapped in a situation she couldn't fully control. "What's the catch?" he asked warily. "No catch," she replied. "But if you choose to send a message, you must do it quickly and quietly. The tribunal cannot know." Henry's mind raced as he weighed his options. This could be the lifeline he needed, the way to break free from this nightmare. But it could also be a trap, another layer of manipulation designed to make him compliant. "And if I say yes?" he asked. Elyra's eyes met his, full of earnest hope. "If you say yes, I'll arrange everything. It will be risky, but I believe it's worth it. You deserve a chance, Henry. We both do. Henry hesitated for only a moment before nodding. All right, let's do it. A faint smile touched Elyra's lips. Thank you, Henry. I'll return soon. Be ready. As she turned to leave, Henry felt a flicker of something he hadn't felt in weeks, hope. It was fragile, like a single flame in the dark, but it was there. And for the first time since his capture, he felt like there might be a way out. But as the door slid shut behind Elyra, doubt crept back in. He was about to take a huge risk, and if it backfired, the consequences could be dire. He knew he had to tread carefully, but for now, he clung to that small glimmer of hope. He would prepare himself for whatever came next, knowing that the path ahead would be fraught with danger, deception, and perhaps, just perhaps, a chance for freedom.